Hi and welcome to All Things Marvelous. I'm John Paul and today we're going to be creating this looping abstract geometry node setup in Blender. I came across this brilliant artist called Lucas Braun, or Lorem de Loop on Instagram, and I thought, I wonder if I could recreate something similar in Blender. Please go and check out his work, it's really great, and give him a like if you fancy. I'll put a link in the description. Also, if you wouldn't mind giving my channel a like and subscribe, that would really help, and I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so now the intro is done, let's get into Blender. First, let's make a new window and open up the Geometry Nodes editor. Select the cube and click New. To start, we're going to need a volume cube. From there, you'll need to input these values if you want it to look the same as the tutorial. This can be anything you want, but if you want it to look like mine, then input these numbers here. It's minus 0.3, minus 1.12, minus 1.14 on the minimum, and then 0.310, 1.130, and 1.130 on the maximum. Next, we're going to need a volume to mesh, and then a set shade smooth and a set material. Then you need to add a Musgrave texture, a Voronoi texture, and a color ramp. If you plug the color ramp into the density and set the Voronoi texture scale to 2.910, then put the distance into the factor, and if you bring up the slider, you'll see it now turning into something a bit like Swiss cheese. Then we need to put the height of the Musgrave texture into the vector of the Voronoi texture and change it to 4D. Bring the scale up to 0.680 with a dimension of 4.240. And as you can see, if we move the W, we can get the desired animation effect. Next, we'll add a position node and a vector math node. Plug the vector of the math node into the vector of the Musgrave texture, then the position into the top vector of the math node. This will allow us to control the position of the animation. Now, we need to add a group input node, and we'll add the resolution for X, Y, and Z all into the same node input, and then the material as well. This will allow us in the sidebar to change the resolution and material easily. If we keep it at 32 for now, just while we're making the animation, it should speed things up. Change the animation to have 500 frames, and go to frame 1 and set a keyframe using the I key above the W. And then, at the last keyframe, set another one so they end and start on the same number. Then, we'll just go along the timeline at a few intervals, maybe one at 120 and set that to 2, another one at 250 and set that back to 1, and then lastly at 360 and set that to 1.5. Okay, great. Now we need to animate the position of the object. This is going to take a few more keyframes. You can follow along with the numbers that I'm inputting in the screen, or you can just choose ones for yourself. As you can see, I input something that made it slightly move too much towards the end. And I adjusted this here by going to the point where it moves to the side and changing the value so it moves just a bit less. Remember to hit the I key while the box is orange to confirm the animation change. Great, looking good. So the next thing I'm going to do is open up the graph editor, and on the start and end animation keyframes, I'm going to adjust the handles so they start and end in a similar position to make it flow properly. You can always check what it looks like by changing the resolution to 256, and you'll get this very smooth and angled geometry. But let's put it back to 32 for now while we keep on working. Next step is to add the material to the cube. Best thing to do is just go to the Material tab and click New. Then open up the shader editor and we can edit it from here. delete the principal BSDF and add a refraction BSDF. Duplicate this 3 times, then add 2 mix shaders to combine these nodes as shown on the video. Next, we're going to highlight all of the nodes and press Ctrl G, which will make a group. From here, we can add the last mix shader output to the group output and take the color and the IOR of each separate refraction into the group input. Also, we'll need all the roughnesses into one node and do the same for the normal. Then we press Tab and we'll come out of the group and we can name this glass. Now we need to set the colors to red, green and blue absolute colors and change the IOR to 1.4 for the red, 1.45 for the green and 1.5 for the blue, and connect this to the shader surface. Let's go back to the geometry nodes editor and input the material that we've just made. Now you'll be able to see that we have this nice glass refraction on the object. Next up, I add a plane and set it to 90 degrees on the Y-axis. Go into edit mode and scale it up. Come back into object mode and we can move it to the back. Actually, I think I'm going to scale it up a little bit more, and to do this, you can just press S to scale the object as well. Okay, jump back into the shader editor and click New. And then grab a gradient texture and a color ramp. Click Ctrl T on the gradient texture if you have Node Wrangler enabled. And then on the gradient texture, plug in the color into the factor of the color ramp on one side. I'm going to set a nice pink on one side and then the other side a bit of a green. Stick this into the color of the base color and the emission and put the emission to 0.5. This will give us a nice gradient for the backdrop. Next, head over to the camera and select the view that you'd like to see in the viewport. Click Ctrl, Alt and 0 on the number pad and this will set the camera to the view that you're currently looking at. I'm just editing the camera's attributes here to line up the geometry how I want to view it. Brilliant. Okay, back to the cube. We're going to add a little bit more detail to the color by adding a bubble type texture. To do this, we're going to use a principal BSDF, a hue saturation value, then a noise texture and a bump. Change the noise texture to scale the detail to 10 and distortion to 3. And put the color into the color of the hue. Change the saturation to 2 and then click Ctrl T on the noise texture. You can actually delete the vector math node and just connect the generator to the vector of the noise. Connect the color of the hue to the base color of the BSDF and the same color output to the height of the bump, and then the normal to the normal. From here, turn the transmission up to 1 and the roughness down to 0. Next, add a transparent BSDF and a layer weight node and put the blend to 0.6. Then using a mix shader and a color ramp, I actually connected the Fresnel here to the factor, but you need to connect facing. Then connect the color of the ramp to the factor of the mix shader, then connect the transparent output to the mix shader input, then the principal BSDF to the second input. Then again, select them all and press G to create a group. Connect the mix shader output to the group output and the transparent color input to the group input, and press Tab to come out and name this bubbles. Next, we're going to add another layer weight and a color ramp and change the position on the color ramp to 0.473, and we need to change the black to a bit more of a grey shade as well. Move the hue down to about 0.967 and the value to about 0.047. Again, I connect the Fresnel here, but it actually needs to be connected to the facing. Grab another mix shader and put the color output of the ramp to the factor of the mix shader. and then take the glass and the bubbles and connect the two inputs to the mix shader and put the output into the surface of the material. Then change the color on the bubbles to blue. As you'll see, this creates a really nice shade effect around the edges. It doesn't seem to look quite like the tutorial, so if you pop into the bubble section and change the detail to 15, and this is also where I correct the facing error. Now we can see a nice shade of blue over the whole thing. Again, I changed the black to a bit more of a grey to give it a bit less of a transition on the colour ramp. And again, I also connect the facing to the factor of the colour ramp rather than the Fresnel. And now, as you can see, this is the desired end effect. Okay. Just to add a little bit of detail, we're going to make the surface a little bit less smooth. To do this, we're going to add a noise texture and a color ramp, duplicate the color ramp and move both of the sliders to about halfway. On the first one, change it to B-spline and add a bump. Change the image scale to 0.11 and the detail to 15 and the roughness to 0.85. Connect the color to both factors of the color ramps. The first color ramp output to the roughness and the second color ramp to the height of the bump, then the normal to the normal, and change the strength to 0.1. Now we should have a bit more detail on the surface of the object. Okay, so I think we nearly have everything done, and you can keep on checking the final image by changing the resolution to 256, so you can see what it looks like in the camera view. Nice. Okay, a few last things to set up. I added an area light and pointed it towards the object. I put the power to 1000 watts and this should give us some nice highlights. Remember to reduce the resolution to 32 again if you want Blender to run fast while making these changes. When I check the animation, as you can see at the end of it, it kind of jolts a little bit. This is to do with the handles on the animation of the graph editor. If you go to the Musgrave texture while viewing the graph editor, we need it to look like it's continuing on from where it started. As you can see, I'm lining up the handles to be the same angle at the start and finish. This will give us a nice smooth transition between the loop. Make sure you save the file and set the noise threshold on the render to 0.1. Make sure you select the output folder where you want to render the files, and then you can run the animation. Don't forget to change the resolution in the geometry nodes back to 256. From here, just sit back and let it render. Thanks for sticking it out till the end. I hope you liked the video and managed to follow along. Let me know in the comments what you think, and if you have any ideas for new videos you'd like to see, just let me know. Catch you on the next video.